takes about 5 minutes for that broadcast to come through.
Okay.
So if I've pushed all the right buttons, we should be coming online just about now. So if I've pushed all the right buttons, we should be coming online just about now.
Okay. Alright. Let me...
Okay. Did you just hang out? Okay.
It went away because something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hang out? Very good. Chat with. Very good. Okay, so I guess we should talk just a little bit more and see whether they, I don't even know how to say this, lerb Q per duck. We're hearing nothing whatsoever besides noise.
Yeah. Okay. It should be fixed in 4 seconds. Depending on how far behind they are. Okay. Let me see if I can bring Tennyson back on the line. And if anybody else would like to participate by voice, just either send a message, a Skype ad to Mark's phone, M-A-R-K-S phone. I'm going to put that in the chat window.
How come it's a pic? Sorry about that. How come it's a picture of me? Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah, and I can turn on my video, and everybody's going to see me reaching over the screen to type on the chat machine behind me.
Ah, very good.
Okay, so this is part of what I'm not really sure how this is going to work, but what I want to do is have a discussion on the different tools we use to collaborate. We're working with online conferences today. We've got a whole range of different social networks we can try. Do we just follow each other's blogs, or do we set up wikis? I want to examine the different tools we might have for working together. I've got Gil and Tennyson McCullough are just joining me on the line now. Here they are. You on there, Tennyson? Okay, it looks like it is. How about you, Gil? Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm fine. I was flipping my mute on and off to minimize the choppiness from last time is gone too. I have a question. Was the presentation I did choppy? The hour I was on? Does anybody know?
Pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I hear you good.
Okay, yeah. Excellent.
Now, are you going to be leading this, Tennyson?
No, I think Mark is going to be leading this, but I guess anybody could really start it off.
Yeah, I want Tennyson here mostly, so when I start fiddling with getting the software put back together and issues like that he can at least keep the conversation moving. So I think just as an introduction, I mentioned it before, but let me repeat it again since we had sound issues. During this session, I want to talk about the different tools we use to collaborate. I had imagined originally that Wiki might be the best way to work. There's lots of social networks, and social networks in general social networks are sort of inclusive. I want to think twice before I try and set up a private social network for discussions. But I'd like to sort of open up the discussion, whether we just do Facebook group or whether we do groups on LinkedIn or other social networks, or whether we set up a wiki. I kind of like the persistence of a wiki. Social networking is good for transient things like setting up a quick meeting, but I kind of like research that hangs around for a year or two so that somebody can find it later on when they suddenly realize they're looking for somebody to teach them how to be a mediator. They can find it online. So those are the kind of issues I want to talk about. I think, let me also just say how to participate in the roundtable as far as I understand it. I'm kind of making it up as we go along. There's three of us in an audio conversation right now. Dennison, Gil, and myself, Mark. If anybody else would like to participate on audio, then I've put my Skype address, Mark's phone, in the chat window. So you can just send me a Skype ad, and then I'll bring you into the conversation. Otherwise, if you want to just chat away in the window, I've got that open, and we'll read it out and repeat it, and try and include your questions and answers. One of the first things I should probably do is I'll show off the website that I've got up for the moment. Let me figure out how to open up new Firefox without starting all those feedback issues.
Well, can I?
Yeah,
I guess I'm not a tech guy, right? I'm mainly somebody who uses systems, and so what I approach this from is I have issues, I have needs, but I don't know necessarily how they can be solved with technology.
Right.
So let me throw a few issues out that I'm grappling with. In one of my papers, I write about the advantage of having an ideologically anarchist organization, and part of what that implies is that I will really need to be able to find people who are both, say, a qualified mediator and an anarchist, or both somebody who's a criminal justice graduate and an anarchist. But I'm early enough in my research that it's not like I'm really ready to hire someone, which isn't necessarily saying that I wouldn't be willing to pay somebody to do some stuff. I mean, I've done a little bit of that. But I think that some sort of, I don't know if job board is the right word, but more of an area where anarchists can come in and say, yeah, this is my area of expertise, or this is what I'm interested in, or people saying, look, positions, not necessarily positions available, but the types of positions that are going to be demanded. Again, I have a number of projects I do, where I use actuaries and mathematicians and people who know about patrol and people who know about law, and if we had a place where we could have just anarchists that could share what they're good at or what is needed, that could be worthwhile. So what's the technological answer to that?
The need. What's the need for having anarchists only? Is it for security, to defend ourselves so that we can not worry about the discussions we have?
No, not at all. It's not a security issue. It's the issue is, and I write about this in my paper, The Role of SPR in the Future of Liberty. The fact of the matter is that ideology is important to every exceptional organization. And this is true for Sony, it's true for Apple, it's true. They have a certain ideology, some of which has absolutely nothing to do with how they make money. It's their core values that they then are uncompromisable portions of what they do, even though they have to make money while embracing this ideology. And in order to do that, so in order to be successful, I argue, it's much easier for me to find a mediator who really gets the idea that I have this idea of a stateless order in mind.
No, I understand exactly.
That's the reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not so much
delay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but no, what I wanted to say is that, ideally what the Internet's going to give you, or what this new technology and connectivity and communications will give you, is just access to people. And people have been able to sort themselves into all types of different groups. It's self-organization. And so if you're looking for people to help you out, then the ideal place to do it would be online to do a search for them. And a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to friends of mine about what exactly could you do if you were trying to establish a free society? Like, could you establish something out in the desert or something, a whole new town, and something like a Las Vegas? And so that ideally what you'd want is something like you'd said, ideological group, I guess, as initial founders of this kind of thing. They'd be ideologically anarchist, and they would know the market society and all this stuff. But I'm also kind of leery on that point because I don't want to get too close to, say, like a Murray Rothbardian, vanguard type of thing, where he needs this vanguard to be the Leninist vanguard in order to start the revolution. And it just doesn't seem like it's the libertarian way of going about doing things. But ideological purity at the beginning, it seems, would be the best way to at least ensure a optimal roll for this thing. Like, it's a ball you're rolling or something. I'd like it to roll optimally. And that's just kind of how I feel about it. But we'll see.
Now, there are certain pockets. If we're just talking about a place to source ANCAP or market anarchists, people that understand the philosophy, I seem to run across people all the time when one of the first things after you find out they believe in market anarchism, they say, "Where, you got work?" I think at the conferences and the other places that we're attending, or maybe just these online conferences, as they build up, we'll find more and more people that get liberty and that already have that background basis, that cultural corporate culture, I guess, that matches up with what you're interested in. Now, there's some other people in the chat room saying that they also like the idea of job boards, and also people that are saying not just jobs but projects in general. And I see, Gil, you like that idea of a project space. Let me show what Jeff helped set up for me. Jeff's in the chat room, I think, on Ad6.
Look, somebody's recommending hacker spaces. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, I'm hoping to set up a hacker space in Meat Space. The project that's at the top of my queue now for new businesses is a coffee shop south of Richmond. We're still doing building on it. I was hoping to be able to use that. But basically, a hack space is a place where people can get together physically and just spend some time working hard on the project together. Sometimes in open source projects, if, say, people want to have new installed or develop new applications, then they'll go in and spend the day working together, comparing all their notes in real time so that they can get a job done quickly.
Something I wanted to ask, this is a setup question, is what are you listening to? Are you listening to the Skype, or are you listening to the thing on Agra.io?
I'm listening to the Skype, and I just got a request to turn it up.
I'm listening to the Skype. Gil, what are you listening to?
Yes, I'm listening to the Skype, because there's a delay to the Justin TV, so...
Yeah, Justin TV...
And I got the Justin TV muted, so...
Oh, good. Alright, so now everybody's kind of on the same level, because before I couldn't really hear what everything sounded like, but okay, everything's good.
Okay.
Hacker spaces rule. Well, hacker spaces, I guess, if I understand the situation that you guys are talking about, it's really geographic concentration of anarchists that are working on projects, which is in some ways the Free State Project idea. But generally, it's also one of the advantages of an ideological anarchist business at all. Because if you set up an anarchist business that requires anarchists to work there, you're going to necessarily have a number of people working together all day long, every day.
And I think with a hackerspace, it usually also implies that it's temporary, focused on a short amount of time. So it might be like a side track at a conference or something. We might say, I don't know, since you and I have been to Mises Austrian Scholars Conferences, we might say anybody going there show up a day early and let's all sit together and brainstorm a project.
That's not a bad idea to do, to have, and there are a lot of places that do this. For instance, the Society for the Development of Austrian Economics is its own conference within the conference, the Southern Economic Association Conference. And whether it's before or after the ASC, or even in parallel in some track, something that's focused specifically on entrepreneurial projects would be great. One of the things that I have a challenge with when I do these conference presentations is, I work really, really hard, and I create a lot of content, and I learn a lot, and it's very hard to share in 10 minutes the richness of the concepts that are evolving, and get good feedback from people who are interested in continuing to evolve them. And then the other thing is that the location of the Mises Institute, it is the libertarian mecca, but it's really hard to get to. You got to fly into Atlanta, and then you got to drive, or then you got to take a bus. And if we had it in a major city like Chicago or Houston or New York or LA, then you would have more people able to quickly attend and get out. That's just something I had.
Okay.
Anarchist secret handshake.
I've got this aversion to cities, so one thing I kind of liked about Alabama is that I could get in the car and drive for 10 hours and be there, and skirt around the Atlanta and other big places where predators are looking to snatch people off the road. But that's sort of part of George's inspiration for Agora.io, is to avoid the whole issues of travel. Basically, that travel's gotten more expensive, maybe not in dollar terms, but in personal dignity terms. And so let's try to figure out ways that we can get together without that additional cost. So I don't know if we're talking about ideas, rather than building machinery, then there might be ways we can get online collaboration to work for us, but like we're seeing with this session, sometimes the technology gets in the way. It can be an interruption and a barrier to communicating. I think probably we need to go back and forth with different techniques at different times. Sometimes I like to work at 2 in the morning and put my ideas down when I know I'm not going to get interrupted, and get something ready, and then let everybody else look at it the next day.
Another thing that I was thinking about was some of the current projects I have. So one of them is the mediation casebook project, and this one in particular, I'm working with several mediation victim offender reconciliation programs and mediation programs that we're putting together a protocol to report in settled mediations in a standard format, and then develop from that a casebook. But it's a website that I'm developing right now, and it all gets reported in through Google Form, and then gets edited and then ported over to a different database. And I think my long-term intention is to turn that into a business all by itself, which is if you're an arbitrator in a victim offender mediation, what you want to do is, let's say you're arbitrating a battery where someone beat somebody else up, And your question is, well, what's a proper restitution for that? Well, if you have a bunch of mediated cases where battery victims and offenders have worked this out many times and agreed, then you have a point of reference to make a proper arbitral decision. And there's an analog to this in the legal sphere where there are settlement websites that you can subscribe to and read and view settlements that you can then use as an arbitrator or even as a litigant. So that's my idea for that mediation casebook website, but I'm not really a web guy. I'm just trying to get it done. So,
well, let me show off the wiki. This one I've put up under beta.ancapentrepreneur.net. Let me just put that in the chat window here in case you want to go to it. This is a fork from MediaWiki that's used to run Wikipedia. It seems to be infinitely configurable. Let me switch my blocks off. I know it's just Google Analytics. So I think I've got most of it running, but in a tiny window. But it's a wiki, so it takes very little coding or other information to go in and change things.
Yeah, I was talking about some folks about implementing some media wikis and stuff, and this is one of the criticisms I have of MediaWiki. And this is kind of funny because it's kind of in the overall, we're here at this Agora conference, right? But we're in the ANCAP Entrepreneur channel, which is a little bit more rigid, right? And then I'm a little bit even more rigid than that, which is I don't really want to do all my work in an open wiki because there are privacy issues, there are things that, you want to communicate something to somebody but not to this other person. There are ideas that you want to work on in a kind of secure area before it's ready to show to others. And so I've talked to people about implementing media wikis, and it just doesn't have a lot of security features where you can carve off a piece to be accessible only by a certain group of people for a while, and then later change those wiki pages into publicly accessible wiki pages. Anyway, it's kind of along the same lines of the discussions about project workspaces, which I guess is what I'm more interested in, is secure project workspaces where you can be free with the information. You can maybe deal with information that is sensitive, and then once you're done, you can populate more public pages where a broader community can interact and can help.
Okay.
That's my $1.20.
Okay, and there's different ways we can address it. The software, of course, can claim to be secure, but whether that actually means it's secure is a whole separate issue. If we want real security, then I think that probably direct PGP heavy-duty cryptography is probably the best way to go. One of the things that I've noticed is that of the different businesses I imagine that we need to help encourage a free society, IT seems to be pretty well developed, maybe with media behind that, with the different alternative media that's available. I think there could probably be a lot of people that just advertise to us internally about, hey, I'll set you up with email encryption, and then you can at least communicate with everybody in your address book securely. From there, you can just go on. You can do encryption of voice over IP. don't know how secure Skype is from that point of view. I remember reading that the NSA put a bounty out for somebody that could break the Skype encryption, and I think I read a week or two later that Skype was in big money trouble and looking for an investor. And it didn't take long before somebody put the two together and say, this is a really vulnerable situation. So we'd probably want to look for some sort of open source alternative if you wanted real heavy duty industrial security. But it's, as people are saying, it depends on the level of security we want. Jeff is offered to look into MindTouch and dig around in there and see exactly what levels of security you need. If it's just something convenient, if you want to make sure that nobody sees your press release or your ads that you're preparing until you're ready for your promotional release date, that's one thing. If you're worried about a violent competitor coming in and cracking your system and committing crimes with it, then you need a much higher level of security, and ones that you have to be pretty careful about how you implement and use.
Yeah, online security is definitely a big thing, but PGP, key, GPG, all that. It seems like there's no easy way to actually implement that in a lot of systems. So some people will try and get it done on the Windows systems or the Linux systems or the Mac systems. And only a small minority of people seem to actually be able to get it done. So I think a key marker would be making some of this stuff easier to implement or just easier to do. And there should be a demand for that eventually, but I don't think the demand for it is here just yet. So once they really start cracking down on open communications on the internet. Oh, I must have my audio down.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's... Now, can everybody hear me? Because I'm getting some complaints, mostly from inside the house here, that my audio is not loud enough. So I'll try and talk louder. Hope I don't blast anybody that's cranked the sound up to listen to me. So you said, Tennyson, that the difficulty of implementing encryption you think is a drawback?
Definitely. So people will try to, they'll be interested in the idea of internet security. Like, wow, I could communicate securely over the internet and have all this stuff. And then looking at PGP, some people simply find it daunting and they ignore it. And they're like, it's just like doing not freenet, but the other thing. No, I can't remember it now. But it works really with Firefox, essentially. And you can't, if you don't really know how to do it, you become frustrated and just ignore it. Yeah. So
or
eventually, I think time
more than it's really capable of doing.
Exactly. So I think eventually, what somebody will do is just come up with a lot more simpler ways of doing things. Kind of how the internet actually developed. It used to be a lot more difficult to communicate and do things on the internet, but with a more user-friendly user interface, things became better. Yeah. And people got on. It just became natural.
Now we say it's difficult to implement, but with HTTPS, I assume everybody else, but a lot of people do banking over that, and although a risk is there of it being tapped in, there's an awful lot of encrypted banking transactions that people use and take for granted. So I think it depends on the context. It depends on what level of encryption you expect, what your expectations are, the ease of use, like you say, and sort of the consequences of having the security broken. You'll never get perfect security, that's not the objective. The objective is to try and figure out the whole cost benefit and how much you want to erect in the way of stopping people.
That's true.
So I wanted to say another thing, which is I think I heard from the chat window here and us talking that of the things that we've been talking about, the easiest thing to implement is some sort of, for lack of a better word, jobs board that just kind of positions wanted kind of thing, even if it's just a project. I would love to see that implemented either on ANCAP EntrepreneurNet or I don't know where, so that I could point to and we could drive traffic to it for anarchists to post their skills and their needs. I'm getting really excited about that.
It seems like something that Brad Spangler tried to do with Black Vanguard, but I don't think much came of that just yet. They're probably still working on it behind closed doors, but he and Mike Gogolski, they're doing things with that. But I think probably the easiest way to do it now would be to put up an ad on Facebook. So just find Facebook, put in the right keywords, where it's going to be targeted, it's real shaped media, and then people will find you.
And how much control do you need over the audience? I mean, if you were to buy ad space in typical anarchist media, you could draw people back in. I don't know. There's some self-selection there. It's not like you have to be a strong gatekeeper that only the anarchists that know the secret handshake are allowed to see the ad. It could be that all you want is to get a good supply of responses of people that typically are market anarchists, and by the time you read through cover letters and have a discussion with them, you quickly find out who's got the corporate culture you're looking for and who doesn't.
Yeah, it's true. One of the cool things about Facebook ads is that you can really direct who the ad is going to be seen by. So you could actually make sure that nobody who doesn't use the words Murray Rothbard or something else in some sort of context will see this ad. And so it's a pretty interesting thing. So I definitely recommend checking that out. A huge number.
That's a really good idea. Thanks.
Yeah, a huge number of people in the world are on Facebook right now. So if you want a good subset of technologically literate people who are definitely ideologically driven, then that's the place to go.
Somebody in the chat room just mentioned Odesk, and so I've browsed that. And I've got JavaScript set off, turned off everywhere I go. So switch that on, and people are going to be seeing it come up in a few minutes in the broadcast. Libertai, he likes the looks, or he or she likes the looks of Mind Touch. Mind Touch has a free version, and then it also has a proprietary version. The one, of course, I've installed is the free version, of the one that Jeff has installed for me. Some people are talking about Odesk. I'd have to look around, but yeah, I would think just looking on Facebook, going to a large area, and then from a large pool of people, just doing a targeted ad might be the best way to do things. Lurb Q. Burdock is asking in the chat room, are we thinking of spending money on this? Gil, do you anticipate that this is something that we want to build, or something that's already out there that you just want to find?
I don't know. I already spend money. I mean, I've spent money. Let's see. Do I have my audio on? Yeah. Okay. I've already spent money on Google Ads. Doing. In fact, I know Stephen Fairfax is coming later. I got really excited about his business model, and I put together a little website called oresme.info, and put together a marketing questionnaire and then bought some Google ad space to drive traffic to it and get people to answer the marketing questionnaire. But I've never done Facebook ads. But like I said, I've already started to pay people to do some stuff for me. Not partially because I'm cheap, but partially because of where I am in my project, and that it is an ideological open source type project that I'm doing. I would love to find other anarchists that have capabilities, that are interested in developing the business model, that aren't in it for the money, they're in it for the ideology, but are willing to commit to the project and work on a paper, present a paper, put stuff out on the web for people to read and understand. So when I say a job board, maybe Facebook ads is the way I should go to try to get folks. I just had never thought to do that.
Something that I think people might be surprised to hear is that, because the question is already, like you're already doing this, as if there's a time, like, is time already so far gone that we need to start looking into this seriously? Or is it more like, it's a kind of hobby we can work on right now? It's not going to be something that's going to protect our lives in the future. It's going to be something that we need to just see if we can do. But maybe it is. Maybe it really is time that we start doing these things, just to see if it's necessary.
Right, and I'm completely committed to launching the business, but it's not that I lack capital or people. I've been approached by people who want to fund things, and I've been approached by people who are, I was approached by a very high-profile guy who is the founder and owner of a very large security company, and the problem is he's not an anarchist, and he doesn't quite get the vision, and I'm not completely clear that, if we partner on it, that it's going to turn out the way that, and he's talking about, we can supplement some of what we do with some, getting some city contracts, and, he's talking about various revenue streams and things, and I see that, getting into this tar baby of the state where, the minute you start relying on the state, it's a problem. So what I'm really interested in doing is drawing in some highly capable and anarcho-capitalists. I think my ideal would be, even if they're all over the country or all over the world, they help me plan and devise what we're going to do, and then they come to Houston, we launch it, and so it becomes something that's imminent, but there's a very important planning phase that has to take place. And it has to be done by people who really get the concept.
I understand. I'm surprised that you haven't been, approached by a Blackwater or a Z. It's probably going to be called Z from now on. But the amount of actuarial analysis that you've done, and the realistic seeming prices that you've derived, and the market structures and amortization, everything. It seems like any security company will probably want to approach you for any kind of work. But I don't know, maybe it'll be a short-term project or something. I mean, definitely all these big security companies out there are big status companies. But maybe as a short-term thing, it's something you have to do to gain real experience and to get people who will be able to be attracted to the ideology.
Now, when I was in South Africa and the security there fell apart, there was just a profusion of private security companies. I mean, they all started off as guard services and places that would be guarding, or companies that would be guarding warehouses at night started expanding into guarding communities and having response units that would come up. As the shortage of security happened, as needs for security were out there, there didn't seem to be a shortage of small companies that were trying to fill that gap.
Most certainly. And There are bunches and bunches of these security companies, and more than once have I cold contacted a bunch of security companies. Recently, in December, got pretty serious about one security company here in Houston and talked to them about co-venturing, but it just didn't work out because the guy does not have an end game in mind that we have in mind. And every time I go down this path with another security entrepreneur, and I've done it 3 times now, and I've realized that they just don't have their eye on the ball from my perspective. And so part of this is kind of systemic. My analysis of the patrol guard situation is that the way that this is sold, it encourages the market to be very cost driven as opposed to value proposition driven. It's just the structure of the market, and the way to get over that is by implementing an insurance element. That is, if what you do you're on the hook for, then there's a total value proposition there that's missing from the current business model. And I think that the reason that nobody is going into this is because it's complicated. You have to have actuaries, you have to have good patrol people, you have to have investigators, then you have to have on the side mediators and arbitrators that you can hire to resolve disputes between your victims and the offenders. So it's just a complicated business model that nobody is attacking. And part of the deal is the security companies, for the most part, are mom and pop shops. It's 2 or 3 guys, they run a shop, and they're ex-cops or they're ex-military, and it's a charge man hours type of job.
Well, one of the reasons I'm interested in having an open place where we can explore business models like that is just that other anarchists that come to work at the ANCAP Entrepreneur Network on their projects can start gauging what incremental steps they can take to maybe take their job and start going for an internal market. Some service that you need yourself, maybe somebody that's been doing firearm training and is involved in the liberty movement from a firearm training point of view. Start deciding that security might be a good small step to the side to change his market.
Gil, something I actually wanted to ask you there is that in your historical analysis of the problem, why hasn't the private security subscription patrol restitution kind of model broken out spontaneously in the past? Why isn't anarchy exist now?
I think it's complicated, but I've got kind of 2 answers to that, and I have written about this extensively in a couple of the papers, so I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I'll just say there are 2 business models out there right now. There's home monitoring, and then there's the patrol guard companies. Now, I've just been talking about the patrol guard companies and the fact that they're all ex-military, they're ex-cops or whatever, and they run man-hour shops, and they typically, their biggest clients are government and institutional. So they'll sell to a corporation a huge block of business in terms of labor, and they use that same business model when they go after like a homeowners association or something, and they sell a big block of, okay, we're going to patrol this whole neighborhood. And then you kind of get into the economics of agency theory. The thing is that the people that the patrol people are working for is the 2 or 3 guys in the homeowners the homeowners association that determine whether or not they're going to get the contract next year. And they spend a lot of time managing those perceptions
And they do a very good job trying to persuade those people that they're providing high value for the cost they give. But the reality is that those services are very cost competitive, and that is the primary way that people differentiate in the market. So I'll leave that to one side and kind of I'll make one more comment. One more comment is that there's a new term that's emerging in private security, and it's called para-policing. And the whole idea is, well, there are medics and there are paramedics. There are lawyers and there are paralegals. Okay, well, there are cops and there are para-cops, para-policing.
Okay.
And the thing is that they have this mindset that as private security, they are merely supplemental to what the state provides. So in many ways, their business models they have this blind spot from the very fact that they don't even take anarchism seriously. They don't take seriously the idea that they may be able to be as competent as the cops are to handle everything. So that's the guard side. Now the other side, the other type of thing is the home monitoring companies. Now the home monitoring companies, it's like the Brinks, the ADT, that sort of thing. Their value proposition is, again, they also have as the largest part of their business large institutional clients, including governmental institutions, where there's a large campus, and their value proposition, basically they kind of compete with the Guard and Patrol people, is they come in and they deploy technology to reduce labor costs. So they come in, they put in, various lasers and cameras and locks and all sorts of different things. And so it's deploying technology to minimize the amount of labor they have to spend on patrol for a large campus. And that's like 85% of what they do. And then what they do is they deploy that technology into the homeowner sphere, and they capture that as an additional revenue stream. The problem is that it doesn't make as much sense there, but it still works, on a marginal way. And if you look at the composition of the board of directors of some place like ADT, you'll see they're all from technology firms. They're all like former Micro Center, or they came up through Tyco, or it's all technology guys. So the home monitoring people don't even think about labor. The whole point of their business model is to get rid of labor, so they're not going to bring in patrol. So that's my my long answer, obviously. But
all right. So I'm thinking mainly this is probably an explanation for why it doesn't break out right now. But I think maybe the explanation would be for other situations, like the collapse of a state, for example, like the fall of past states, like the fall of the Soviet Union, or the fall of monarchist France, or even the American Revolution.
Right. So I have an answer.
Ideological deficit. You have an answer, okay?
I do. Yeah, it is. Well, it's ideological and it's institutional, and this is going to be the subject of the book that I'm writing this year. But basically, I'm taking what I've learned about security and defense, and I'm trying to write something along the lines of Murray Rothbard's "What has government done to our money?" but for security.
Done to our security.
Yeah, basically,
I want to build up from.
Yeah, just kind of build up from the bottom. What does a free market in security and adjudication look like? And as much as the work of, the Tannehills and Bruce Benson and all these guys have been great, they really have not come up and said, okay, here is a 100 or 200 page description of what a free market really looks like. What are all the firms? How do they interact? And then the other part of this is that we know there are all these interventions, and we know the
the fact of the matter is that as interventions to a market take place, they kind of invite further interventions. And there's a pretty obvious set of interventions that take place, and they take place in kind of an obvious order. So if you monopolize the adjudication to a particular court, that is, you force people to a jurisdiction, then it starts to invite additional malum prohibitum legislation as opposed to into the body of law. And then when the prohibition, when you have the malum prohibitum legislation, people don't follow it, so you have to have state security and you have to have the search power. There's a whole series of interventions that have taken place historically, and so there's kind of a logical structure there, and then you can apply that into historical insight. So I think that's all I can really say in a short time, but I think there's an answer there. It's just it's complicated, and we haven't figured it out.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was hoping that somebody out there would write, or something maybe Roderick would write it, but a book called "What Has Government Done to Our Liberty?" And it would be an explanation just like Murray Rothbard. It's basically broke down money and rebuilt it up, straight from theoretical principles kind of thing, a whole mental construct of this, to do what it meant for a monopoly state system to actually come into existence, and what it meant for liberty, and just like what monopoly government minting meant for money, etc. So, yeah, I think this would be an excellent book. If you could make it as short as that would be even better.
Yeah, unfortunately. The paper I just presented at the Austrian Scholars Conference, which is on my website at the top. Well, it's the second item now because I put the PowerPoint I just presented up. But it's called "Structure of Production of Free Market Dispute Resolution," and it's basically is one part of this book, and it will be. And it's specifically on what does free market dispute resolution look like. So that's about 30 pages, so it's not going to be as short as what has government done to our money, but hopefully it's as simple. Can I address some of the comments I'm seeing in the chat window here?
Sure. Address them and Please. Wrap up. If we can, we'll push through sort of content issues till the 4 o'clock session. We can pick them up again then.
Right. So
try and wrap up the technical issues. If there's any comments there you want to address.
Okay. Well, I'm seeing this thing on private security and competence and so forth. Part of the thing about the SPR business model is I'm trying to create a patrol situation where the complexity of the work. Well, first of all, it's problem-oriented policing. It's not observe and report. So the INFINX, or however you pronounce that, is correct that the way that private security works right now is they are considered an observe and report type function, and they're not really people who do problem-oriented policing and investigation. The good thing there is if you create a job position that has complex skills, then you can justify a larger wage, and you can really get some very competent people into those positions. And
there are other questions you wanted to raise?
Okay, well let's table the rest of the business model discussions for 4 o'clock, and we'll pick them up again then.
Okay.
I'll have all this archived. I think I'll probably go ahead with Jeff in trying to configure some of the basic wiki functions in MindTouch, and then we'll just start trying to use that, see how much we can do with, and perhaps from there bootstrap ourselves into finding other tools that we want to work with.
Thanks, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and
okay.
Yeah, hope the whole crowd comes back in a couple hours for the next one.
All right, 4 o'clock.
I'll sign off now. Jeff is in the chat room, so I'll let him start getting set up for his presentation. Going by memory, yes, he's next up. So I'm going to switch off now and quit broadcasting from my site. Jeff, feel free to pick it up. And if you need anything from me to help get your presentation going, give me a shout.